This episode of Chuffed Adventures, I repair the raw water pump and do an oil change before having a wild time at an animal sanctuary. Hey gang, so my parts have come, woo, to rebuild the raw water pump for Janet the engine. So just so you know, I ended up ordering these through like a pump supply company in the States. So it was $26 for all the spare parts, whereas a new pump is something like, or a repair kit is I think $180, and the pump itself is even more. So if it goes well, it'll be a really cheap repair and much better option than ordering the parts through the company itself that the pump's made through. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'll be videoing myself fixing the pump and telling you what I do, but I'll also be watching videos on how to fix the pump as I go. I've watched a few already and I think I know what I'm doing. We will find out soon. Oh, and if you wanted to know, the guy I watched rebuild the same raw water pump is a guy called Alan Carter on YouTube. So just, you know, YouTube, rebuild, Yanmar, raw water pump, Alan Carter. And he may actually be Liam Neeson in disguise because you never see his face and they sound the same. So check that out if you're about to do what I'm about to do. But hopefully I'll be able to show you the correct way to do it too. I just can't guarantee that yet. Okay. So first step is just getting the actual raw water pump off the engine. So I'm just going to take all these pipes off, drain them. With any luck the impeller arm will come out. I don't think it will, but still. And then I've just got to undo a few little bolts here, take the raw water pump off, and then we can get to repairing it. So I'm going to put some music on, which means I'm not going to film it because it will not pass YouTube copyright standards. But that's the easy part. It'll be the repair that will be interesting.
While you're lined up in traffic, I'm not panic. Thousands upon thousands of flying discs. Took a whole job 55.
Alright, so he's off. Now, I did have to loosen this and take this off to be able to get it off the belt, but I have it in my little dirty hands now. So, yeah, we can start the rebuild process. You can see it's super, this is where the leak was in here, and I actually had to wedge paper towel in there to try and help with the leak. And the thing is, you can see the rust because of the salt water. Obviously, it's just rusty, which leads to even more failure. Alright, so first I'm going to pull it apart and then clean and then start the repair process. So I've already undone this a little bit, so let's just keep going there. You can see that's quite dirty. There is still grease in here, which is good. And you can see some of my bearings and things as well, but I might actually even put that back on for now and go to those at the end and start my way from the top and work back and do some cleaning so I don't get mixed up. So now I'm going to get these little fellas off. That is rusty as that's where the leak was quite bad and it's really rusty. Now, another trick was I actually loosened these a little bit on the engine because I can actually get a lot of grip on the engine with this sitting in place, whereas trying to hold it in my hand and loosen them is not so easy. This one's not as loose, but it's still not too bad, hopefully. It's not fitting in so nicely. There we go. Might have to pop it back on the engine to get some more grip. There we go. There we go. Jesus, look at them. My muscles are going to be huge at the end of this. Alright. Now, this is the bad bit. Look at that. That rust. I mean, in an ideal world where parts were readily available and cheap, I would consider not using this rusty thing, but for now I'm just going to give it a really good clean up, use some rust protectant, and it'll work for now. Alright, so I'm going to start from this end because this is the end I know better. So I'll just undo all these little bebes. Got that off. Now, this is a new impaler, as you guys remember, but I will pull him out, give him a clean. I've got a replacement for this O-ring, and then I believe from this end we can replace the oil and water seal in here, and then we can check out what we can do back here, because yeah, I might need special tools to replace some of the things back here, but we'll see how we go. We'll see what happens. So you can get impeller pullers, or you can just get veterinary instruments and pretend that they're the same thing. There's the impeller out. Okay. So in here we have little seals. Now, one guy had a video of poking something back up in this basically backwards direction and then putting them back in. That's what I was hoping would happen. Yeah, that's actually working really, really well. That's a good little thing to have. Ah, there we go. So I just poked that up in behind here, and this is a drape holder. So it's what we use to clamp drapes onto patients during surgery, so the drape doesn't slide around. But I managed to pull it apart, and it actually makes a really nice poker that fits perfectly behind here, which is how that guy on YouTube did it as well. And then you can just poke it up and loosen the part, and you can see it's starting to come out there, in which case I can use my forceps, tweezers, to hopefully get it the rest of the way. So that's the old seal, and I got the new one here. So we can pop him off to the side, and then, oh, this little guy looks terrible. This little fella is sitting in the bottom there, and it looks, let's see if I can get in there. I'm going to see if I can get you to see, there we go. So that's where that was sitting, and you can see that rusted little fella, well, the little fella covered in rust, is actually plastic, way down in here, which is my other little seal that I'm going to replace. So we'll see how we go with that. I'll tell you what, guys, get yourself some surgical instruments on board, because they are really coming in handy with a lot of these repairs. I'm not sure what I would use without it. I guess people probably have special clamps and little pulley systems they use, but I mean, this is really working. Yeah. There he is. Alright. Now it's pretty dirty in there, so I'm going to give it a good clean. And I mean, you can really see now that that's out. You can see the light shining through there, and that's where the leak was really bad. So I suspect it was leaking because these were failing. I'm really just using a little pipe cleaner to get in these little nooks and crannies. Seems to be working nice. So far this is going surprisingly well, even though I'm not sure about getting this out anymore. Boat jobs rarely go this well, so I'm happy. I'm in a good mood. I'm not even worried about those bearings for now. Alright team, next step is getting those little bits back in there. Alrighty, so let's get that one first. And obviously I'm going to be a bit gentle putting use my surgery hands putting these in because I don't want to damage them putting them on, since that would defeat the purpose of everything I've done. Now, once again, this is something that I think having my surgical instruments has made really easy because, you know, trying to push these down seems like people have had some troubles with getting into these little tight spaces. So, you know, $30 online spay and neuter kit might come in handy. Comes with a spay hook, which is useful for reaching in and grabbing things. You know, needle holders. You could sew with it. I don't know. I'm an advocate of veterinary supplies on a boat now. Anyway, alright, so that piece is in nicely, and now we got this little fella, so our second seal there. So it's basically an oil seal and a water seal, so this guy looks much healthier than his friend did. I'll show you again with some light. So here's the old one, here's our nice shiny new one. So hopefully that will fix the problem. Okay, gonna squish that down in there. Now this is the one that's a little hard to squish in. And this is where the guy actually ended up getting a socket and used the socket to squish it down, which might be a good idea. That actually looks better sealed already. Alright, so you can see that little guy's back in there. And then we put the impeller back in, so you know he fits on top, like so. And then I am going to replace this O-ring as well. Even though it wasn't leaking, I just figured I'll order a new one and replace it. I'm just putting some water in it and it's not leaking out the bottom, so that's good. Jam it in there. All good. Okay, so I think that's all I'm gonna do. I'd like to know your opinions about these, whether I should go ahead and try and tackle the bearings or not. I mean, I know it would be ideal to replace them, and I do have them. They're only a few dollars, which is awesome. I'm just worried after watching some of the videos and reading some stuff about getting this shaft out. It sounds like a lot of people needed a press, and some other people like had to drill holes into pieces of wood or table to kind of use as like a block to get it out. Yeah, so I'm just not 100% sure on that one. So yeah, any advice much appreciated. Perhaps that's something I'll tackle in the future. I think for now I'm going to see if this has fixed the leak, replacing those seals, because I really think it might have. And if it has, then that is good times, because then salt water is not leaking on my batteries and we will all be happy. The funniest thing about videoing yourself do stuff like this is, like, I realize how uncoordinated I look when I use tools, and it's the same as when I've seen myself do surgery. And I've had people tell me that before, that I'm a surprisingly good surgeon based on how my hands look when I'm doing surgery, but so I'm more coordinated than I may appear. I guess once this is done, I'll run the engine for 10 minutes, and that's why I'm thinking maybe I'll do the oil change, because, you know, get the oil nice and hot, and then I can change it because that's due. And I got oil, I believe. I'll check that first. Alright, well, I mean, that whole area looks 100 times cleaner than when I started. I mean, obviously there's still some rust, but it's a lot better. And if I can get that salt water to stop leaking on it, obviously then that will help the rust not get any worse. Yay! A boat job that went as planned, somewhat. And I'm going to go pop this on the engine, and I will record that because I'm sure it's going to be funny watching me try and hook the belt on while I do it. So let's go down there. Alright, hook him on like so. Attempts to wedge it in there. Take that away for a second. Now I need to tighten it and hope that I can still slip that back on. Trying to get the raw water pump further that way so that this belt's tighter. To do that, I'm using this to wedge it away. I'll show you how I end up doing that. So I'm using my knee to hold that in place, wedging it apart, and then while using my hands to tighten. But hey, it works. Now, with the Yanmars, they generally recommend with these Johnson pumps, you don't want your, you actually don't want it super, super tight, the belt. So this one has maybe like half a centimetre give in it. So I'm going to see how that runs, and I can always tighten it a bit more if necessary, but that might be enough. She's running grip-free. So I've decided I am going to do an oil change, since the engine's nice and warm. Now it's relatively easy doing an oil change in these engines. They have a nice little attachment, a pump that you can pump the oil out with, and then I'm going to change this oil filter, which is just back up in this area, and put some new oil in, and then the engine will be happy. Taking this cap off just helps with the suction, so you don't kind of create a vacuum. Oh yeah. Already coming out everywhere. Gross. Yeah. Nothing. And while it's empty, I'll do the little filter change, which will probably be very messy. I don't even know how this happened. I have oil all over my leg. Alright, so just to show you what I'll be doing in here. Where is it? I'm trying to see if I can find the filter. Ah, there it is. That little black thing down there is the fuel filter. So I'll be changing that. So you can see it's pretty tight space. I've already shoved a towel down there. And I'll be trying to use a plastic bag to kind of drop it into and then put the new one on. Probably get a bit messy. Open that up a little more. Yeah, that wasn't so bad. Seals come out a little bit, I'll just pop that back in. There we go. So with these ones you hand tighten, and then you turn using like a tool 3/4 of a turn more. So let's try to do that. Okay. I don't think much of a mess was made. And now I've got to put 2.8 litres of water, oil in. Oil, toil and trop. No, that's not how it goes. It's bubble. Oh my gosh, my brain is a bit silly. I'm sorry, guys. 2 litre. I mean, the thing is, I actually was saving this for like cooking, but I literally never ever use it. So it may as well become a tool for boat stuff. Alright, all this oil stuff can go in together. And I mean, you saw the difference in colour, so it was time. I'm just going to turn the engine on for just a few minutes to let that oil run through, check the levels, and the engine work is done. Woo! Now I don't feel guilty about going to the beach. Alrighty. Alright, it's like 5:30. On my way to a boat so I can assist with some monkey surgery and maybe some sloths. It's going to be a good day. I'm sorry it's bouncy. I'm too tired to try and walk like, you know. Mode of transport for wildlife veterinarians everywhere in Costa Rica by boat. We waited offshore for the monkeys to be distracted by food, because if Winky sees Dr. Andreas, she will run into the forest and won't come back. So Winky so far has proved difficult to catch. She knows the other two veterinarians, but she doesn't know me so well. So we're hoping I'll be able to inject her when she doesn't suspect it, because she won't go anywhere near them, so no pressure. We had the theory that if you can't get the monkey in the cage, then why not put the vet inside? In reality, I locked myself in the cage for my own protection, in case the monkey girl group got a little bit angry after the injection.
Okay, there you go. Can you get it?
Thankfully, Winky was soon asleep, and we began her examination. Winky had a mass at the back of her throat that had been treated with antibiotics and steroids. Luckily for her and for us, it's almost completely gone with medical treatment alone, avoiding a difficult and probably painful surgery. With Winky in recovery, we're off to examine some of the other patients, and we of course had a supervisor in Miss Sweetie the whole time. Our next patient was Boogie the Tyra, an animal in the weasel family. Boogie had been receiving training to allow her to be injected more easily. We discovered Boogie had an infection of her breast milk known as mastitis, so we spayed her to reduce her hormone levels and put her on antibiotics to treat the infection. She's doing really well since this treatment.
Antibiotics and getting the uterus, the ovaries all over.
A peccary is a large wild pig, native to Costa Rica, and this big boy was not as easy to inject as Boogie.
Getting
sleepy.
You see it's going down already. I mean, it could be quicker, so.
Okay, now,
Dr. J stood guard after the injection while we loaded the mail, as his wife was not very impressed. The big fella had some lumps to remove that will be sent away for analysis, but it seems like they are benign. And yes, in case you are wondering, when you use cautery on a wild pig, it still smells like bacon. I stayed at the sanctuary a few days, and every night and every morning I had a little shadow following me around. You gonna get some breakfast? There? What have you done here? Where? Before I knew it, it was time to leave, but what an amazing experience working with experienced wildlife vets and the caretakers, not to mention all the beautiful animals. Join me next episode for more wildlife, more animal work, and of course more boat jobs. Until then, stay chuffed everybody.